Chris, Florida State to the Big Ten. We've talked about it for months and months and months, and now we got another surge of reporting out there that it could possibly be a real thing, and it could be sooner than expected. What is your take on the latest? Unfortunately, Chris, we don't have you.
Yeah, I guess Chris's audio.
Yeah, we don't have you now. George, your take about Florida State and the Big Ten. How does this hit you?
Yeah, man, we've been talking about it. Chris has kind of actually been a ringleader on this particular topic going back, I think, a year ago. He pretty much put it out there that he thinks Big Ten would end up being the destination. And then we got that great conversation with the board chair, Peter Collins, and it was just, I mean, it really blew everyone away. He pretty much in a word or two said that granted rights thing is nothing. It's no longer a roadblock. They've got it figured out. Whether that means they have, investing firms that they spoke to that they feel like they can cover whatever that number is that it's going to take to get out of that. It looks like this is a real thing that's going to happen. I don't think, everybody calm down. I don't think it's going to be 2024. We might know something by the August 15th report date this year, but I highly doubt you see Florida State in the Big Ten next year. But I believe it's coming. It's going to be between the Big Ten and the SEC. And of course, the SEC is so wrapped up in the ACC and now ESPN. They've already got that property in Florida and the University of Florida Gators. Big Ten just to me seems like, the destination, not to mention, the AAU requirements. Florida State for several years has been looking into getting those going, so that's all points, all roads point to the Big Ten to me, if you ask me.
Yeah, the AAU status is something that Florida State's been pursuing, and the last go around did not get, but is in that final group to be approved.
Absolutely.
So I know that Nebraska currently is in the Big Ten without the AAU status. I think that's something that the Big Ten wants, but no longer requires. And I believe that the Big Ten would be accepting of a school like Florida State. And if you really look at Florida State's academic rankings, it's not like that they would be at the bottom of the Big Ten. They would be in the mid-range of the Big Ten. So they would fit in favorably in the Big Ten academically. And obviously the Big Ten pretty much has every box checked in terms of being a superpower, except recruiting footprint isn't the best. It's mostly in the Midwest. Now they've got an anchor in California. To get a Florida school or two for the Big Ten, I would think that would be an enormous get. Chris, hopefully we got you now.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we've got you.
So everybody don't get mad at me. I'm in a motel in Sarasota, Florida. The Wi-Fi is a little bit iffy, so forgive me if it cuts in and out at all like it just did. But yeah, we've been talking about the Big Ten for over a year where, most everyone, when we did bring it up, it wouldn't make no sense for Florida State to go to the Big Ten. The SEC is the only thing that makes any sense. I can understand geographically why people would think that, but the ACC makes less sense than the Big Ten travel-wise, in my opinion.
Because you have a good point there. Yeah, if you really think about it. Go ahead.
Yeah. But, Florida State flying to Pitt, or when we play Notre Dame, flying to Boston College, going up in the mountains of Virginia. Syracuse. So I've done the miles, and actually if you were in the Big Ten and they kept you in the consecutive area, you'd actually be traveling 141 less miles on the Big Ten than you do if you stay in the ACC, custom that you have 7 home games like you already do. You'd actually travel less per mileage. But, now that Florida State's president and board of trustees and athletic director have came out and basically just stated that if we stayed in the ACC, it would be a death penalty, basically, especially for all the other sports that are funded by football money. And I don't think that we would ever let the football program die off, but you might see this club team or even potentially a softball team or something like that end up taking effect from it. So I think people need to realize that the grant of rights is what everybody's now throwing up. Even the owner of Sideline Sports, he wrote me and asked me, he was like, "So you really think this can happen? Because the grant of rights are supposed to be, this sealed deal that you can't get out of." Well, I've interviewed athletic director Michael Alford. I've interviewed a couple of the board members, um, and they all seem to not believe but know that they have a way out of the grant of rights. Now, this is a similar situation. Now, the years ago when a couple teams left and went to a different conference, Maryland being one of them, stuff to that nature. There was an additive put into the grant of rights where everybody thought that everyone in the ACC was dumb because of signing the grant of rights for so long with the ACC would be ignorant. From my understanding, there is a price in there that states that the ACC would not be but X dollars away from the peers in the other conferences. And while I don't know the exact number because it's not exactly an even 15 million or something like that, it is a base number of difference. But um, we would be far, far from what we were promised by the ACC. So either the grant of rights on the ACC side would be looked at as a breach of contract, not being able to keep us up to par with our peers, or you would look at it as a fraud situation almost, promising something that's not available. Um, and for our chairman to say that the grant of rights document would not be the one that would stop Florida State from going into another conference or doing what it has to. And now that other fan bases are starting to pay attention to it, they're all a little bit salty about it, especially other teams in the ACC that don't feel like they have a home outside of it. Clemson's not salty; they know they have somewhere to go. Florida State's definitely know they want to go somewhere else and have that opportunity. So now other fan bases, and even our board of directors stated to it. They stated, some of them are upset with us. Some universities and brother universities are upset, but we don't know what they expect us to do because we can't compete. When if we was to stay in this conference, it's over $400 and something million in gap that we can't make up for. So I don't know if Florida State makes it, known before the 15th of this month being the deadline. I don't know if we're going to go that far and say that it happens. But it wouldn't surprise me if we did, because the board director stated that they would be coming back to the board sooner rather than later. And he made that statement multiple times. So it makes me seem to think that it's much sooner than later. So it wouldn't freak me out at all if Florida State came back to their board of directors and had an exit plan, already had it cooked up. I almost feel like where a lot of people are saying that this was a bluff to put ACC on notice, we've already done that. This one was to find out where your board members were. I think, is everyone in agreement that this is the right move, or staying in the ACC is a bad idea? I personally think that was what this meeting was about, and seeing how you didn't hear from all 327 of them or however many it is, but you heard from a good amount of them and no one opposed it. So I would say that everybody's on board, and we're not willing to sign over a suicide, basically. I mean, we can't do it. Florida State deserves to be, in the top of the talks nationally. We should be able to compete nationally. We have the right coach now. We have the right athletic director, the right president of the school. So now is the worst time for this to be happening. I do understand that none of them want this on their table, but these are the reasons why these people were hired. We didn't have the right people in place before, unfortunately, that got us into this deal. So when fans are saying, well, why did y'all sign this deal then? Well, it wasn't these particular people in charge that signed this deal. So let's get that right. But I think Florida State is on the move, whether it's in the next 2 weeks or the next 12 months, because people have to understand the exit plan, and the exit is a minimum of 12 months.
When I heard a few months ago that Mike Alford, from the day he took the job at Florida State, had already contacted lawyers, research groups, consulting firms, all the people that know about this kind of business, I thought, man, here's a guy that did his homework on this job before he even got it. Here's a guy that came prepared. Here's a guy who understands this stuff can't happen overnight, that we got to get ahead of it. Here's a guy that doesn't mind being, instead of just going along with the pack, being the guy to say, no, this isn't right. I'm going to do what's right and what is best for this school, the school that I'm working for. This is my school. We're going to take it to another level, and we're going to do what's right by us. And whomever follows along, that's great. And I'm going to be the leader of this rather than. So he's been out in front of this. There's no question about that. In terms of the grant of rights, I am no expert on the grant of rights. When I have somebody who knows law, a legal type in front of me, they typically say it's lock solid, it's locked in, all of those things. However, I have heard, and we've talked about here, there being at least 3 paths or a combination of these 3 paths. Either you just outspend the thing, you just pay your way out of it, or there's a clause in there that if the ACC proves to not be competitive with the rest of the nation, and now, well, that's vague language. What does that mean? Well, I would think that if you can show a judge that us making $30 or $35 million a year is not competitive with another school that makes $90 million a year, and then you extrapolate that out for 10 years, and we're making $500 or $600 million less in a decade, that doesn't sound too competitive. And then the other one would be if you can get a certain number of schools, whether it's like 8, I believe, together, then you can dissolve the conference and leave. And we already know that they had a group together of 7, I think was the number. So, and rarely are those kind of buyouts, when you're talking that kind of money, do they have to be met to the hilt? It's almost like a buyout of a contract. Usually, and it's almost like paying off debt, where you can get away with, you know what, we owe you $500 million, but be happy because we're not going to tear you through court for years and years and years. Here's 300, make it go away. We're gone. Everybody's happy. You got your money. We're gone. I'm not saying it's that easy, but that could be a component there as well.
Hey, you're absolutely right. And another side of it, and you kind of alluded to it there, it's get everybody to the table. Get the parties that are involved to the table and figure out how to move it forward. It makes a lot of sense to me that you're the second option you named, being the kind of golden dagger that the board and Mr. Alford, are looking at to beat the grant of rights. Because, I mean, there's no getting around it. It starts at $30 million and pushes towards the end of that contract around 2034. It's like, I want to say over 50 million. Like, it's just a completely untenable situation. And as ironclad as it is, here in 2024, if it gets in front of a judge or however they do those proceedings, I just don't see somebody with common sense, turning that back. And the only other option, besides leaving and, doing whatever is necessary to beat it, would be for ESPN to come to the table and, hey, what's it going to take, or ACC. But they've already said that the unequal market revenue share is not going to be enough. It's just not going to get us there. When I first saw it, and I saw we're 13% pretty much of the market revenue that comes in from all these TV deals, et cetera, and I punched it in the calculator, it comes out to 77 million. If you got your 13%, but that isn't what they were offering. That would put us right in line, but it was something totally different, and I believe they said it would still be a $20 million gap or something like that. So that's not the solution, but you're absolutely, I'm 100% with what you said, Mark, and that second option, kind of has to be it.